Hello from a bye week. It's the Pick Six podcast with the Omaha World-Herald. I'm Evan Bland, Sam McKewon, Tom Shatel. And do you guys ever take midterms back in school when you try to assess what you've learned and you go for the home stretch? That's kind of where we are for Nebraska. They have a nice, neat, midway through the regular season bye week. And what a chance for us to maybe reflect, to look ahead. I know that's your favorite thing, Tom, to forecast and see what's coming. Is the bye week coming at a good time for you guys? Seems like a good weekend to watch some football and maybe regroup a little bit here midway through.
Best weekend, college football weekend of the year is coming up in terms of what's on paper. My concern is that we actually just had it, and there was a bunch of upsets, and the games were great all day long. We didn't get to see all of them, but they were good basically from the beginning of the day until the end of the day. This week coming up should be the best week of the year on paper. Hopefully it lives up to that. Texas, Oklahoma to start it off, and then, the big one, Ohio State, Oregon, in the evening. If those two games live up to what I think they could be, then it'll be a great day. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm looking forward to having a bye week where the college football is this good. And maybe the playoff baseball. You never know. It could be good too.
Could be. You excited for your bye week, Tom? How are you going to spend it?
Well, I'm going to work. Thomas don't get bye weeks, but that's fine. I think just because there aren't upsets, I mean the games will still be great this week. I don't know if they're going to shake the earth like last week, but. The interesting now about the playoff is last week was fun. It doesn't change much. There's still plenty. There's still going to be 12 teams getting in that playoff, and if you lose a game early, you're not out of it. So, but it does put pressure on, I'm sure. But I want to see K-State, Colorado. That's going to be North Dakota State, Colorado all over again with a lot better players on the other side. Mm-hmm. So. And that's the late show. But OU Texas always delivers. I've covered that game. I don't care how good either one is. It's always even going down that ramp, and there's so much hate. And OU has a little incentive. I think Texas is a playoff national title contender. They can give them a loss, and then they have to go play Georgia the next week. So, always fun. I may roll out some corn dogs for that game, and then for Oregon, I'm probably not going to do seafood or whatever they duck. Probably do pizza at night. We'll have fun. It's always good to have a week off and just kind of unwind.
Do you guys think? I mean, we talk about just the upsets in college football last week and how good it looks on paper. Like, one, does it feel like the parity is greater than ever? And two, does that make it feel like Nebraska is closer to being relevant or further away? Because you look at some of the CFP bubble teams right now, and Nebraska's 5-1. I don't know how much difference there really is between a team like Nebraska and, say, Iowa State, for example. Like, does the climate of college football affect how you're viewing Nebraska and what its season still can be?
Yeah, I don't think Nebraska's that close to Iowa State. I think their offensive line is still not there yet, and special teams are hardly special, but although you got to love Brand Machine, you got to love him. I mean, what he did last week was special. What does relevant mean? In today's world, relevant means, are you going to the playoff? That's what it means. Are you one of those contenders or are you not? And being ranked doesn't mean that. I mean, for Nebraska, everything now is new and fresh. Oh, they're ranked. Oh, I haven't had this in a while. They're this or that. 5 wins. It's great. So Nebraska is relevant in that they're kind of popped back into the bowl game projections. People talked about them after the Colorado game. We're not talking about them as much now, but they'll talk about them if they can beat Indiana.
Yeah, if they had beaten Illinois, right? If that pass to Lindenmeyer is caught, I think we would be talking about Nebraska and Indiana as sort of like a college football playoff contender game. Nebraska would probably be in the top 15 if they'd beaten Illinois. I'm not saying that they are a top 15 team, but if they'd won that game and they were 6-0, they'd probably be ahead of Indiana, and Indiana's 18th this week. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, I think the new system does allow other teams to be in the conversation. It does mitigate the impact of last week. Like Alabama losing to Vanderbilt last week is cataclysmic last year because Alabama still has to play a couple of other teams. Georgia losing to Alabama would have meant that its game against Texas is like everything. Because if they don't win that game against Texas, they're out. They're just basically out. And so it does diminish a little bit the regular season, but it's still exciting, and it still makes it a lot of fun. And for sure, it's something that college football fans are probably still getting used to. They're still getting used to the prospect of some of these games still mattering down the road. Texas A&M is in the mix. A couple of years ago, they probably wouldn't have been. So Nebraska does benefit from this system. I was thinking about this during the bike. I don't know who I was talking to. Maybe it was you, Evan. Maybe it was someone else. But I was like, for Nebraska to really get a mention as a college football playoff contender this year, based on the schedule, they probably got to go 10-2. They probably have to be 10-2. 9-3 is probably not gonna get them inside that bubble. 10-2 would put them kind of maybe right on the line. But 10-2 still means they lose 2 league games, and you're trying to figure out whether they're going to make a Big Ten championship or not, and how many teams from the Big Ten are going to make the playoff. Right now, I think it's projected as 3.
Yeah, maybe 3.
And those 3 teams are probably going to stay ahead of anyone who's the 4th team, unless USC beats Penn State, and then you're looking at something else. So. If we're talking strictly about that, and I know there's a hesitation of talking about anything other than the next game, but I'm not a coach and I'm not a player. So as a journalist, I can kind of speculate and look ahead. I think 10-2 was probably the entry point to the conversation for Nebraska football every year. And then anything less than that, you better be playing really dang good against some of the other teams that are worth beating, or you must be losing by 1 or 2 points. So 10-2 is the conversation each year. And I do think 10-2 is within reach of Matt Rule's program. Maybe not this year, but maybe next year, maybe the year after. You never know.
So this is midterm day on the Pick Six. So I have a couple multiple choice questions for you guys, an essay question.
Oh boy!
But every answer,
the blue book.
Every answer.
If I knew I was having to take a test, I would have stayed home.
Oh man! Well, we're grading on a curve here. But okay, so for a moment, play teacher here. It's a midway point. We're 6 games in. What grade are you giving Nebraska football from the season's first half?
B+, because I've obviously not an A, but I think the turnover margin right there for me is the defense and the quarterback, and the fact that they finished off the last 2 games, especially the last one was a really difficult one to win. I've seen them in a shootout, and that will serve them well to Indiana. They can move up and down the field. That they can throw it. They can get in the end zone. They can't kick a field goal, but not yet anyway. But I love what I think. It's a B+ first half. It's absolutely changed the way I see this team. Going into the season, I didn't know. I picked 7-5. The way they played the first 6 games, I think I expect them to miss like halftime for the season. How are they going to finish? They've done a pretty good job finishing some of these games. How are they going to finish? They've had a little tough time in the second half of some of these games. How are they going to finish the season? I really think the way that they've gotten better at turning on the penalties, as you wrote. Okay, got to clean that up, but there's a lot to clean up still. But I feel better. I feel different about this team than I did in August, and I think it's going to go to a bowl game. It should win 7 and could win 8.
Yeah, probably a B for me, just because special teams takes it down just a little bit. The special teams is probably a D, but you don't weigh the third phase as heavily as you do offense and defense. And I think I'd give the offense and defense both, based on the expectations we had for them coming into the season, probably a B+. So, just a little bit below a B+. Nebraska's played, in my opinion, one excellent game against Colorado, who I think, again, is not a bad team. I think they've played a couple of pretty darn good games, including the Rutgers game, even though there was some messy stuff in there. And then, they had a loss that I'm sure they would like back. But honestly, I don't think that Nebraska played that horribly in that game. They just, they had a few things go wrong in the fourth quarter, and they're going to have to look inside themselves, which I think they did after that loss, and they've tried to correct some of those things. But I don't take a lot of whatever out of that loss. I think that one hurt them a lot, but I think as I watched that game, and I've watched it again, yeah, Illinois is a little bit better football team. There's some concerns about the things that Nebraska's defense was doing in that game, but I think it wasn't a bad loss or anything like that. So I'd say they're about a B, and we'll see what happens. I think the 2 games right out of the box on the road will be an incredible litmus test for where this program's at, because one of the teams they're going to play is kind of a surprise, and one of them isn't. One of them is exactly who everybody thought they were going to be, even if they lose to Oregon. Even if they lose to Oregon, which they might. That's still a really good football team, going to be playing at home in its stadium. You know everything about that stadium. We've all been there. Hard as hell place to play. So the next 2 weeks are going to tell you a lot about where the program's at, because if they compete and they play their very best, they're going to win one of those games. If they compete and don't play very well, they're probably going to go 0-2. So those games matter, and then we'll reassess. Then they play UCLA, and UCLA is probably going to be down in the dumps by then. But they've played some bad teams too. Purdue's bad. Mm-hmm. Purdue's 1-11 probably this year, or 2-10. UTEP is bad. That's a bad team. And so, that the games where I think they probably played the best in some ways were against teams that are just not very good. So we will learn a lot about the program in the next 2-3 weeks, month.
I just had parent-teacher conference for my elementary child, and so I'm going to grade on the O is outstanding, the S is satisfactory, and the E is emerging. I think it's a solid S for Nebraska. If you talk to the fans, yeah, I think they're satisfied with 5-1. They're not outstanding. They didn't go unbeaten. There are flaws, from the penalties to the special teams to the running game to those couple games maybe where the defense wasn't tackling to the level that it had hoped. But when you talk about what the year 2 expectations were, what people were hoping to see, I think largely they're satisfied for now. And in a year or two, that appetite's going to increase, and it's going to be something different. But I'm giving them an S. It's not the big smiley face for outstanding, but I think you get the nod, and they're on track to what people have expected for them to do.
Yeah.
All right, here's a true-false question for you guys. Nebraska's first half of football has you optimistic for their second half. Is that true, or maybe are you more wary? Is that false?
I just explained that. True.
True.
Yeah.
Even with the level of competition going up.
Yeah. Well, but I don't see USC is going up. I see USC is by the time they get there is going to have a couple more losses, and they're going to say, we're out of the playoff. What are we doing? I think the USC game is going to be gettable if Nebraska keeps improving. Iowa's Iowa, but that's a game you can go in and you can compete. Wisconsin, UCLA. Indiana, I think is going to be tough. But yeah, but the next 2 weeks are not the whole second half, right? Mm-hmm. There's just 2 games. So I'm looking at the whole thing and going, I see 6, 7, and maybe 8.
So are you more optimistic because of how you view the opponents, and maybe they're more fallible than you thought, or is it because Nebraska's ascending and you feel like maybe they're...
No, I think I just explained that, but I'll explain it again. Their defense, their quarterback, I had no idea how he was going to play. I didn't know about the receivers. Nebraska can score some points. They've got a really good running back. I didn't know they had that. I didn't know what he was going to do. I didn't know how Satterfield was going to use him. They're never going to be a running team, and they don't have the offensive line for that. Although it's not a bad line, but it's not there yet. It's still year 2 of an offensive line. I feel good about the turnover margin. That was the biggest storyline going into the season.
Sure.
And it's been really good. Penalties, I think the Big Ten refs are, I don't know what they're doing. Nobody does. I think replay has changed how these guys either call too much or not enough. But regardless if that's not an excuse, Nebraska's still not clean. But yeah, I'm optimistic. But a lot of that is defense, and a quarterback who makes plays will take you very far. You'll be in every game if you have those two things. Now, to win a lot of these big games, you've got to have everything. Okay, Columbus, Ohio, everything has to be going your way. You have to block a punt, not have one blocked. You have to have 2 penalties, if that. So I'm still a little leery of those deals, and they can't kick a field goal. So that should make people pessimistic, because you're going to need to do that at some point. You can't go through a season not being able to kick a field goal. I mean, it's going to get windier, right? So I'm hoping that Alvaro can come back and make some field goals. But even if he can't, I still feel like they're going to make a bowl game. I think they should win 7, and they could win 8.
Tom makes a good point about the USC game. USC's schedule is such that they could get worn down. They could get really, dejected. I do think it's a good team. I think the schedule they're playing is harder than any other schedule, other than maybe UCLA. So it's possible. Yeah, I mean, I think by the time Nebraska actually goes to LA, USC could have 4 or 5 losses.
Right.
And at that point, that USC team may be like, yeah, we're
checking out.
Absolutely.
So the way I look at the second half of the season, Evan, is check back with me on USC. We'll see. I see one game where Nebraska is clearly favored, UCLA. I see 2 toss-ups, Wisconsin and Indiana. And then I see 2 games where I think Nebraska will be an underdog, Ohio State and Iowa. And then that USC game is unknown. And at this point, I would say that I'm somewhat optimistic. I do want to see how Nebraska comes out against 2 teams that I think are better than any of the other teams that they've played so far in their schedule. I would like to see how Nebraska responds in a road environment that's going to be hostile. And those 2 road environments will be very hostile. Purdue was not. Indiana will be. It's going to be sold out. It's going to be a big noon show at Indiana, and it's going to be a hard place to play. I want to see how Nebraska responds to that, and then I want to see how Wisconsin keeps playing. I actually think Wisconsin could be a good football team. It's really hard to say. There's so many teams that could go either way right now. USC's one of them. Wisconsin's another. Maryland's another. I think there's a lot of different. Minnesota could go either way.
Yeah.
Minnesota's a 5-point favorite at UCLA. That makes no sense based on what we've seen. But the odds makers know something. They know that game's going to be 13-7 out there. I don't know how they know it, but they do. And so there's something about the league this year where a lot of the teams could go either way. I'll tell you what, Penn State could go either way. And right now, Evan, I think Washington might be one of the 5 best teams in the league. It's just hard to tell. That's why it's fun.
It is.
Because outside of Ohio State and Oregon, you don't know. Nebraska could end up being 9-3. I wouldn't say that. I think 8-4 is more likely. But it's out there. It's possible.
That's the blob you talked about last week.
6-6. Like, Nebraska could play pretty good football and lose several games by 3 points. So everything under the sun is out there, and Nebraska's going to have to play really well, and especially on offense. I think the defense is very good, but the offense is going to have to keep coming. because Ohio State's not just going to say, okay, we'll score 10 points today for you. No, that's not going to happen.
Yeah.
They got to score, you know.
Yeah,
So offense got to keep getting better.
I'm not even worried about the Ohio State game. I don't think they're not gonna do that one. But look at the quarterbacks in this league, and if Raiola keeps improving, who has a Raiola in this league? How many of them? How many schools have that? Not many.
Right.
If any. I mean, I think Gabriel at Oregon. How many? I mean, if he keeps progressing, they give him a run game, offensive line protects him. I mean, and I know Indiana's quarterback has played really well, but it's an awfully good thing to have on your side. A quarterback who makes plays, who's getting better, and it starts to click. The light comes on the more he plays. So, yeah.
To me, I think the conversation, I look at it starting with the Nebraska side of things. Like they haven't really played a full game in any phase to this point. Like you've seen flashes on special teams. Obviously, they've had their struggles. The offense played a good second half against Purdue, played a good first half against Colorado. It had its moments playing complementary football against Rutgers. The defense has been the most consistent piece, but like I look at, okay, what's the path to realistic growth? Like I think the offense can play better in the second half. If Raiola's 6 games into his college career, like you mentioned, Tom, like those drives that fizzle out at the 40 or the opponent 30, he's going to finish those at some point. Maybe it's this year, maybe it's next year. Some of those penalties that they're working through, like that's reasonable to think they're not going to commit double-digit infractions every time out. So, like, I think Nebraska can raise its level of play to match the caliber of opponent that it has in the second half. And it's probably going to come down to what we always thought, which is going to be a bunch of one-score games. Can you win the turnover battle? Can you do the little things right? Can you kick a field goal? I think that's probably the area that you kind of are waiting for the other shoe to drop a little bit still. But how long has it been since we could say Nebraska in season got better as the year went along? It feels like it's heading that way, but we'll see. But
first frost
it
year,
hasn't happened in a long time.
They got better the first frost year.
They did. The results didn't always bear that out, but they were close.
But they got better. I mean, they won 4 of their last.
It's been a long time.
So.
Yeah. No, my advice would be to don't expect too much from this team. It's still year 2. And like you said, they're not complete in a lot of plays. They're still trying to get there. I think 7-5 would be a hell of a deal. People should take that right now and run with it. Don't start thinking about 9. I mean, 9. A lot of things would have to fall into place. A lot of things would have opponents and Nebraska. Right now, just let them get better. Let them keep on the turnover trend, and try to get the penalties. Try to get the special teams figured out. And at this point, I don't need special teams to be positive. I need them to stop being a negative.
Right.
Just go even.
Mm-hmm.
But I think just 7 and 8 would be great.
So
that's my slogan.
Yeah, there you go. Vote for that. So Matt Rule had kind of his state of the program midseason address this week too, and one of the things that he pointed to as an area Nebraska needed to improve was the run game and being more explosive in that way. So here's a multiple choice question for you guys. So Nebraska's averaging 3.89 yards per rush right now. That's 89th nationally, 14th in an 18-team Big Ten. What's the area that can improve it the most down the stretch? Is it A, play scheme or calls? Is it the blocking? Is it the running backs themselves? Or is it just facing different defenses?
C. And I think they think C.
The backs need to make the plays.
They got to make better plays. And that's not trying to be rude to anybody. Matt Rule said it himself. And so, like, if he's willing to say it publicly, it's not the offensive line. And if you go back and look, Football Outsiders, I think, ceased to exist. So they used to have this thing called line yards where they would adjust, they would go back and watch the games and say, okay, how many yards was the back going to get before he got touched? Nebraska's line yards are not terrible. It's not like the best in the league, but they're knocking guys off the ball at times. What's happening is guys are getting 3 yards and then they're getting hit, and then they're kind of running into defenders, or they're getting hit low and they're falling down, It's not that they're not physical; it's they're not making guys miss, and it's I think that's one of the larger issues. I mean, 3.89 yards a carry does take into account Raiola's sacks,
Sure.
but if you take those away, it's somewhere around 4.4, which isn't great. Remember, I think in 2018, Nebraska was at 6.82. And that was with a running quarterback,
Exactly.
with Divine Ozigbo and all that stuff. So, or maybe it was Divine that averaged 6.82. I don't know. But the reality is that, yeah, they can run the football better. And the backs have to be a little better. The line has to be a little better. But you know what? Those jet sweeps are what are saving them. And you can only run those so many times. You can't run them 10 times a game because you're going to get your receiver beat up. And eventually receivers fumble. But the backs have to be better. That's, to me, it's the answer is C.
You copying off of Sam?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd like to see more of these new wrinkles or wrinkles emerge, continue to emerge. Ja'Cory Barney, Harburg, Carter Nelson. And I think they will.
You think Harburg should play more?
Well, he can't play all the time.
Right.
I mean, where would you? Oh, I'd just like to see him maybe a handful of plays a game. But I think that there's a scheme where I'm not saying he was a great option quarterback or anything, but I think that there's a place for him in some of these games, like Indiana,
I agree.
Ohio State.
Yeah.
And okay, you need an equalizer. You
Yes.
need a little bit of a edge that to get you in this, over the top of some of these games. USC, where down to the inside the 20. He's in the Wildcat, or you throw him a pass and he run. Throw him a screen pass. Can he catch and run? I bet he can. He can run. He can run the hell out of it. And he's hard to tackle. I just think it keeps other people off balance, and and he comes in the game and they start thinking about him, and they're not thinking about somebody else. So. I think, and I love that the Carter Nelson deal on the goal line. You go over the top. It's okay.
7-foot high jumper. Yeah.
Let the young man, let him eat. Get out there and give him the ball. And so, I think Satterfield is willing to do stuff like this. I really do. I like that about him. He's not just won this or won. He's willing to try some of that stuff. So, and he's got a lot of fun toys to play with. So I'd like to see some of the toys come out more. And but look, basically these things are going to come down to, can they block, and can the running backs make a guy miss? Do they have those kind of running backs who make him miss? I think Ramir Johnson does do that. Does a downhill Dowdell do that, or is he a boom boom boom? They need that. And Emmett is, but do these guys seem to run through people? But do they, Sam, he keeps talking about home runs and 80-yard run. I don't know. I don't see Billy Sims out there. I don't see Marcus Dupree. Or Mike Rozier. I don't see guys that are going to go 80 yards.
Yeah.
You give them a pitch and they go through the hole and then they're gone.
Yeah.
I don't see Nebraska with that kind of a speed on running back. So. He wants something.
Got a guy
I'm
coming,
not sure he has
he's
it.
not here yet. Yeah. No, I know.
See, that's why I would say A. Like, I think long term, I agree. Maybe it's the running backs, but like this season, I think you got to scheme it up a little bit. Like, you pick your spots with Barney. You get Harburg involved a little bit more.
Barney stuff though. They're doing a really nice job with it too.
Yeah, they are. They're picking their spots.
Yeah, they're doing a nice job with him.
But like, I just
that play to Bonner was a nice little play.
The group of backs
you
that
can't
they
run
have,
it 4 times. You just run it the once.
But like expecting the group of backs that they have to suddenly see the field better or to make a guy miss when they haven't necessarily done that, like I just think it's unlikely. And I think more likely is like, okay, well,
you could add Harburg.
If they need to generate more, then bring in Mazuka as a 5th blocker again, or an extra blocker, or bring out Barrett Liebentritt. Like when those little short lead dive type plays have worked out pretty well for them. So like I think you just got to get a little more creative in the interim.
There's going to be some games in the second half that are going to be shootouts, and Indiana's one of them.
Yeah, I think
Ohio State's another one of them
for sure.
You go to USC, that could be one of them. Wisconsin, I don't know. Iowa probably not. UCLA, I don't know. But I'm just saying that they're capable of doing that. The key to next week might be either winning the toss or getting the ball first, and then having that first drive script, and go down and score in Indiana and put them down 7-0 and see how they respond to that.
They've never trailed all year.
I'd like to see that. Might be the key to that game.
Yeah.
And certainly, Rule is not afraid to take the ball first. But I like that. So, you don't want Indiana to score first, and then everybody, okay, because it'll be a big game for them. And I'm sure Signetti will be out there pounding the drum for the people to sell it out and the students to come and create this big atmosphere. 11 a.m. is kind of hard to. Well, I guess it's noon, but either way, it's not easy to create a loud place at noon. But anyway, I think offense is going to be. I agree with that. I get scheme it up, use all the toys, and we're going to win some shootouts. I don't expect them to win at Ohio State. But I'd like to see him take that game into the fourth quarter.
One more, maybe on an individual level, as we're looking back on the first half. Give me a player or two that has got your attention. Maybe they began producing out of nowhere. They surprised you in terms of what they were able to do, or that's just impressed you. Maybe just a couple of guys that have your attention through 6 games.
Oh, I'll say Dowdell. I didn't know what he was. In the first game when the fumble, I thought, we're not going to see him again. And he turned into a back they haven't had since the Zigbo, and he might be better. Maybe you go back to Abdullah. I mean, he's got potential. He's just getting started, but yeah, I think he's on there. I mean, how can you not say John Bullock? I mean, my goodness, that's why we love college football. Why I'm still covering it. Guys like that, they just kind of they get on sort of a magic carpet ride, and there's nothing magical about him other than his story. But he's a hard worker and he hits the hell out of you. But just in college football, sometimes those stories emerge, and guys have a year where it's just it's just their year, and they know it. They have a little swag, and they make plays, and everybody around them, they kind of lift everybody else up around them because everybody is so excited for them. So, yeah, I'll say those two.
Yeah.
Gunnar Katula, who's come in, and I think he's blended in. Like, he hasn't been a sore thumb yet. Again, we'll see with Ohio State what happens. Although, again, that could be any left tackle and it'd be a long night. Gunnar Katula, Sear Wright, Sire Wright. Heard it a couple different ways. I don't think you can take him off the field the way he's playing. So, what do? Do you move him? Do you keep him at corner? Put Tommy Hill when he gets healthy back in, and then this is interesting, Evan.
Yeah.
Does Nebraska football win the football game against Illinois if Sierra Wright starts? I think they might have. I don't think Tommy Hill should have been out there. I don't think he was ready to play. I think they trust him because he's a baller and he's tough. But on the very first drive of the game, he could not really cover, and he gives up a touchdown right away. It was totally out of character for him. Yeah. He would never have given up that touchdown otherwise. And the reason I think he's out there is because they're not sure what they have behind him. And then he can't play. They're like, dude, you can't. We can't have you out there. You just got smoked. So then they bring in Wright, and all of a sudden, this guy's going to play like the guy that was a top 100 recruit in high school. And then he plays even better against Purdue. And then he played even better against Rutgers. Like, it's an incredible development because it allows them to bring Tommy Hill back at their own pace. Tommy's going to be an NFL draft pick. The injury's not going to change that. And so, they can bring him back at their own pace. And when he comes back, it does allow them to either move Marquise Buford back to safety where Hartzog is. And Hartzog's playing well.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of have a rotation out there. They don't have to have everybody out there all at once. I think we saw in the Rutgers game, I'd probably rather have Sierra Wright on that deep route than Buford. And mostly because Buford's 5, whatever he is. I don't know. It doesn't make any difference. But Wright is, 6 foot, 6'1". To me, that's like a tremendous development. And if they could go over and do it again, and they knew that Wright was going to play as well as he did, they probably would have said, Tommy, sit down. We're going to let this kid go. And they probably don't give that first touchdown up. And that's not to criticize.
No, yeah.
I know that that's armchair quarterbacking. I'm saying they had a legitimate reason for playing Tommy because they didn't know what they had behind him. Now they do. And it makes everything back there better. And so Sierra Wright is my guy on defense. Like, John Bullock's the MVP for sure.
Yeah, they're probably going to need both those guys against Indiana.
They are. Yes, exactly. Indiana's going to put 3 receivers on the field. Ohio State can do whatever the hell they want. They can go 2 tights. They can go 3 wides. They can go 4 wides. But Tom's right. Against Indiana, probably the number 1 passing team in the Big Ten, other than Washington. Yeah, they're going to have to play all 3 of them, plus Hartzog. They're going to probably have 6 DBs on the field, so they're going to probably have a 3-2-6.
Well, as an aside, I mean, that Nebraska secondary is really interesting. I mean, Rule mentioned Bly Hill, who was a preseason projected cornerback starter, got hurt in the spring game. He's fully healthy.
4-game guy.
And now he's a 4-game guy.
I kind of always thought he would be.
Well, I mean,
Kinda.
Nebraska, they thought he was going to be a starter.
I'm not saying he's not going to be really, really good, Evan.
Yeah.
Next year it can be Sierra Wright and it can be Bly Hill and Marquise Buford's back in the safety playing where Gifford was playing. This is a sneaky small story. If they can keep John Butler, I don't know if they're going to keep Tony White. That's up to Tony because he has to get a head coaching job he wants.
Mm-hmm.
If they keep John Butler for another year and Tony White decides there's not a job that he wants, man, they're going to get good at pass defense. Like they're getting good now. They're pretty good right now. They might get great by the end of the year. And what could they be next year? And this speaks to Tom's year 3 thing. By next year, that pass defense could be the really, really good. It's good now, but it could be great because Butler's already added wrinkles. And you see them making more picks. You see them making more PBUs. They're doing stuff this year that they didn't even do last year. So if they can keep that little trio together, Rule, White, and Butler, man, they could be dangerous. Run defense, we'll see. You lose Ty Robinson and Ash Huntmaker, and it's kind of hard. But the pass defense could be elite. Like Bo Pelini level good. Bo Pelini's pass defenses were the best in the country. People couldn't figure him out. Great quarterbacks. Kirk Cousins couldn't figure him out. Colt McCoy couldn't figure him out. That level of great.
I would add,
chance.
I agree with a lot of the names you guys put out there. And I try to look at it through the lens of, like, how many of these guys have gotten better at Nebraska? So, like, James Williams is another obvious one. With the game he just had against Rutgers. And a year ago at this time, he was a guy just trying to make a name for himself on the on the scout team. And he redshirts, and it was a tough decision. And now he's out there doing what he's doing and gaining national accolades. But I just keep looking for evidence of, like, are they identifying talent and are they developing talent? Sierra Wright's a great example of a guy that they identified and brought in. Gatula, they've developed. He was the 3rd string left tackle coming into the year. Ty Robinson, who's been around forever, could have gone pro. He's having the best year of his college career, and he's probably upped his draft stock demonstratively because of it. Raiola, for the struggles that he had against Rutgers, has gotten better, I think, most weeks. So that, to me, is the fascinating part. Like, the team is growing, but you can look at it at a micro level and say, like, this guy's getting better, that guy's getting better, Barney's getting better. Dowdell, I think, has gotten stronger. You mentioned that fumble in the opening week, Tom, and, like, it hasn't bugged him. He's gotten stronger every week as they've gone along. So, a lot of names, and it's maybe not been the case at Nebraska a lot through the years. You want to go to picks?
Yeah, let's go to picks.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I don't want to talk about last week's picks, by the way. Those were rough.
So we had a shake-up Saturday, just like in college football.
Goodness gracious.
Arkansas, baby.
Evan had a hard week. It was like the
Arkansas.
first rough week you've ever had.
That was my pick.
You went 4-6.
It's parity,
Tom
baby.
went 7-3. I went 8-2. And so now you and I are tied, and Tom's 2 back, and it's getting interesting. And this is, Shake Up Saturday. There was a lot going on. Now we go to the next 12 here. These are 12 games, and there's a lot of really good ones on the board. I can't wait to watch this Saturday. Okay, here we go. Utah at Arizona State.
Utah.
Utes.
Utah. I'll take Utah. Red River rivalry. Texas, Oklahoma.
Hook 'em.
I wouldn't be shocked to see Oklahoma win just because of how that rivalry goes, but I got to go Horns.
All right. Next one. Penn State at USC. Great game.
That's going to be really interesting.
Yeah. Penn State leaving a day early on Thursday. They have to bus to Harrisburg because the runway in State College isn't long enough for the size of their plane. Can you believe that?
Yeah, I don't want to hear anybody. I don't want to hear Jay Franklin complain about. Everybody has to do all kind of weird things to get into Penn State.
Yes,
so,
that's right.
So stop complaining about this deal. I'm gonna say USC. I think this is kind of their last stand of trying to get in the playoff and be one of those teams. So I'll say USC.
We got it.
I'm going to go Penn State. I think they can run it on them.
We are USC for me. Arizona at BYU. BYU is undefeated, one of the last few undefeated teams in college football.
What a weird league that is.
They're tough at home. BYU doesn't lose much at home. I'm going to take the Cougars.
That's why I'm taking them as well.
Okay. Yep.
They're a different team at home. Kansas State, Colorado. Oh, man. Oh, boy. I'm looking forward to this one, too.
I am really looking forward to this one.
Who do you got?
K-State, because they'll play like North Dakota State and they'll do it better.
I'm going to go Colorado because it's in Colorado.
The danger of Faroe, and that's not Faroe Field. Why would I say that? It's not Faroe Field.
Folsom.
It's Folsom Field. I always get those two confused. I'm going to go with K-State as well. But if Colorado wins that game, I mean, things are taking off. Oh, man. Ole Miss at LSU. Oh, this one's tough.
I'm going to go Ole Miss.
Okay. We got it.
I don't know if you can call it a trap game, but I think LSU finds a way to win that thing at home.
I'm going to go with LSU. I like LSU historically as a program more than I like Mississippi. Washington, Iowa. Let's see, this one's really interesting.
It really is.
Washington, Iowa.
Oh, this is the kind of game Iowa wins. I don't know how, but I'll take Iowa.
Iowa for Tom.
Yeah, I think we're learning every week like venue matters in the Big Ten. Because it's in Iowa City, I think I give them the edge.
Venue matters. Washington.
Venue
they're
doesn't
a good
matter.
team.
Yeah,
They're good.
Yeah.
They're actually playing good football. I actually like
that. Was a nice win last week, and they could have beat Rutgers if they figured out how to get. But Rutgers will face a tough defense this week. So,
Florida, Tennessee. Tennessee.
Who?
Florida, Tennessee.
Oh,
Florida,
God.
Tennessee.
I'll take Tennessee tuxedo.
Falls bounce back.
Falls bounce back. Florida. Yep. There's something not going right with that Tennessee. I don't know what it is. That was a bad performance.
That'd be a job saver if that happens.
It would. Iowa State at West Virginia. Iowa State's 3-point favorite, just so we're clear.
I'm going to go West Virginia.
That's another great trap game. Cyclones. Go Cyclones.
Iowa State. I'm going to go with West Virginia. Same kind of deal. They play well at home. They don't play great on the road. Wisconsin, Rutgers.
Woo! You know, I think last week Wisconsin was kind of an answer to the Barry Alvarez criticisms and people getting loud. But it's a tough one.
This is great.
I'm not probably based on the former Wisconsin teams, which I shouldn't do. I'll take Wisconsin.
I'm not buying the Purdue beatdown. I'm going Rutgers.
Yeah.
Wisconsin.
Oh boy, Sam and I are agreeing too much here.
Some. We've got a couple on here that are different.
Maybe another shake-up Saturday.
Well, it's going to be. I'm taking some risks. Vanderbilt at Kentucky.
Oh, well.
Biggest hangover game ever for Vanderbilt?
That's almost too easy. I mean, not easy, but obvious. I'll go Kentucky.
Kentucky.
Same.
I'll go Kentucky. And the last one, the big one, Ohio State, Oregon.
I'm going to go Ohio State.
Okay.
I think Ohio State wins by double digits.
Wow.
Will Howard, everybody.
Guess what? We all agree. Ohio State. I don't know if it's double digits, but I do think Ohio State is going to be a little bit more complete. Tough place to play. Man, that was a great stadium to
That was
visit.
really cool.
And we get to go there again next year, right? Right? Next year?
A couple years.
I'm looking forward to that trip.
It's UCLA next year, I think.
Where, Oregon?
Oregon, yeah. I didn't like the drive to
It's very hard to get to.
but man, that stadium.
The Penn State of the
was
Pacific
special.
Northwest.
I like the Animal House. After going into the fourth quarter, I like the Animal House deal they have.
That was
they
good.
sing Shout.
That was good.
But it was hard to get to.
Open air press box. That was the thing that I'll remember.
Yeah.
You don't see that in Wisconsin.
That
or
was
Purdue.
it was really beautiful. That was great.
So I tied Evan up, and watch. I'm gonna fall 5 back behind again.
Well, it's like a basketball rally. You work so hard to catch back up, and maybe you fade. Or maybe you just surpass me, and that's all she wrote. So we'll see. Anything else?
We're good.
All right.
Okay.
This is the Pick Six Podcast. Thanks for listening, Husker fans. Enjoy your weekend. Maybe you're going to go to the pumpkin patch. Maybe you're just going to sit there and watch a bunch of great college football all day. It's a no-lose situation this week. Your team's 5-1. We'll talk at you next week. Thanks.